Good morning. Finally Friday. Busiest morning of the week. Puppy, bins, everything else going on. But it's the end of the week, so that's the important thing. Now, today's topic. I decided last night to ask my gaming group what things they would like to hear me talk about. I've got a list of things that I would like to say, but I wanted to hear what they wanted to hear me say. And a few topics came out. A lot of them were already on my list, so they'll be moving closer to the top. But one of them especially kind of caught my eye, because it's a very interesting question that I don't think gets discussed very often. And that is, what is okay in Dungeons and Dragons, or in role-playing in general? Now, I'm not talking about table etiquette here. That's a whole different topic that's also on the list that I'll get to one of these days. No, but we're actually talking about what content is okay in a Dungeons and Dragons game. Because some DMs rate their games very differently. And it's going to sound like a cop-out, because so often the right answer is, it depends on your group. If your group are all 15 to 18 years old, then there are certain topics that probably shouldn't come up in the game. But if your group is late 20s upwards, then there will be a lot more mature topics that could come into things. And it also goes back to what I said in a previous video about the way you played your characters, in that sometimes, very important and powerful words sometimes, if it's done correctly, doing something in a D&D game which is not socially or morally acceptable outside of the game can actually give you a deeper understanding of why it's not socially or morally acceptable, or why the concept of it not being acceptable is outdated. I have seen it go both ways. I'm running late this morning and traffic is horrific. That's why you're seeing a lot of stopping out here. Yeah, so I'm going to give an example. If you're weak-stomached, by all means turn away. Because I'm going to talk about the game that I remember because of how dark it went, and some of the after effects of that. Now, a bit of background. The gaming group, and I'll talk about this group a lot because they were the gaming group through most of my growth in early D&D and dungeon mastering. I spent about 8-9 years with these people. 4, 5, 6 days a week. But we played a number of games. We played dozens of different systems. And we played a lot of World of Darkness. This is not the new World of Darkness they've done, but the old World of Darkness where it was actually dark. Don't get me started on the new game. They've sanitized it to the point that it's pathetic. But we always played Camarilla. For those of you not familiar with Vampire, two main groups. One of them that kind of tried to hide what they are and work in the background and, at least on the surface, get along with the mortal world. Now, their reasons for doing it was that they thought it would be easier to eat them if they looked like they were getting along. Yeah, World of Darkness, what can I say? But there's another group. There are a few groups, but there are a couple big ones. The Sabbat. And the Sabbat were much nastier than the Camarilla. In a lot of your kind of standard games, you end up playing Camarilla and the Sabbat are the bad guys. You know, that's usually the depiction that it goes with. They're not necessarily bad guys, but they tend to be more aggressive, more violent, more accepting of violence, and in a lot of ways, what people would consider more monster, less human. And we decided, and this was not kind of a flippant, oh hey yeah, let's do this, it'll be a real laugh. We decided as a group, when we were about to start a game, that we wanted to play Sabbat. And when that was mentioned, it started what ended up being about a 7 or 8 hour conversation over, okay, are we playing Sabbat just to be on the other side, but we're still going to kind of be the same? Or are we playing Sabbat so that we can play some right bastards, but still have some, you know, morals? Or are we playing Sabbat? Are we really going to go down the idea of the inhuman, uncaring, only out for themselves monsters? And as a group, we decided if we're going to play Sabbat, let's go all in. Let's build some monsters. And we did. Fast forward into the game starting, and this is where it's going to get graphic, so last warning, if you're not into hearing things that will make most people cringe, switch off. Yeah, the game started. We got into things. The reasoning doesn't really matter, but we ended up chasing down someone who was on a bus. We got the person we were after, but there was a bus full of people there, and we were playing monsters. But we had a couple of the guys that, yeah, they were monsters, but they also liked to have fun. So, you can imagine what a monster does for fun. There was a lot of death, a lot of carnage, but it really peaked. And this is the part where a lot of people say, is this right for a game, is this not? When the DM happened to mention that the next victim that he had grabbed to eat was a pregnant woman. That throws up red flags for some people right then and there. But, reminder, this was a mature group. Well, older group. I don't know how mature we were sometimes. But we did actually like to explore more mature topics, more in-depth psychological questions sometimes. And I'm trying to determine how much detail to go into here. I'm not going to go into all of the detail, because the aftermath has kind of imprinted most of it onto my mind. But it ended with one of the group cutting out the unborn baby, feeding off of the mother, and then 3 members of the group playing catch with the baby, before finally one of them spiking it into the asphalt. The entire group had agreed we were playing monsters. That was where it went. Because the realization is that often when you give someone the opportunity to play a monster, they will want to do monstrous things. I know it seems like a revelation, but, you know. And it was literally a matter of having a voice to say something that is so bizarre, so cringeworthy, so shocking, that there is never a point in life, in conversation, that would ever be okay to say. And through the group's consentment of playing monsters, you've been... And I got a phone call. Like I was saying, you've been given a place to say things that you would never be able to say. And some people use that as a reason to explore those dark impulses that so many people have and can't express. But, of course, there was fallout. One of the members of the group ended up leaving the room and not coming back in. The game ended because people got carried away in the moment and then crossed a line. The problem is, you never know where that line is for your group until someone crosses it. So, the moral of my story is not don't cross any lines, because lines will be crossed. Whether it's mature content, whether it's player versus player, whether it's well, whatever it is, there will be something that one of your players does that upsets or pisses off or offends another player. The big question is what to do after that. And that also depends on the group. In some situations, the players are able to look at the situation, say, okay, it was a character situation. Declining another call. Sometimes the players can look at it and say, okay, it was a character situation. We get that it was a character situation. We, as players, are cool. Let's not play those characters again. Which is what happened in the case of my old gaming group. We said, all right, you know what? We have different levels of what our idea of monsters are, and they don't mesh. So let's not play that concept anymore. Sometimes, though, and this has happened to me, unfortunately, a couple times recently, you as a player or as a DM make the realization that it's not a character issue. Either issues happen multiple times with the same player but different characters, which is when you realize that perhaps someone is using their characters to express an actual aggression that they're not comfortable bringing up in person, but it keeps seeping through their characters. Or perhaps someone is just a destructive player. And that's where it gets a lot more awkward. And unfortunately, more times than not, and this is speaking from years of experience, when you realize that you have a destructive player, whether they're being actively aggressive or passive aggressive through their characters, in my opinion, and this does vary from many others, it's best to cut ties. Yeah, it sucks, it can cause issues, it can be a hassle finding a new player, or someone else saying they're going to leave because their friend left, or whatever it may be. But if they're being genuinely destructive, the rest of the group should be able to see that as well and should understand. If the rest of the group sees no issue with the person, then there is a chance that you're the issue, which in the end amounts to the same thing, because you're probably still going to have to cut ties with the player that you have issues with. It just means that you might have to cut a few more ties as well if they decide to stick with that person rather than you. And sometimes that's the way it is. I have walked away from full gaming groups before because I felt that someone had an issue with me and the rest of the group either didn't see it or didn't want to see it. And yeah, so that does happen. And it's painful sometimes, especially if you've been with a group for a while. But sometimes that's the way it is. So, I mean, yeah, that's what I have to say about the lines in D&D. Me, personally, I don't think there's anything that is necessarily off the table to play, but it is down to the group, down to the personalities and perceptions of people in the group, and there also needs to be a point where you are able to read your group or trust your group to tell you when a line is crossed, so that there's time to back away from it before you go too far beyond it. That's very important as well. If you do get told by a player or get an indication from a player that that's a step too far, stop walking. Stop taking steps. Yeah, so there we are. I'm going to go ahead and call the video for today. I'm probably still going to be in traffic for a little while longer, so I won't say I'm almost to work yet like I normally do. Like, subscribe, all that stuff. Tomorrow is another campaign catch-up. Sunday I won't be on, and then we'll be back on Monday for my predictions for the Monday game. Have a great day. Be happy it's almost the weekend. Later on.